Joined now by Tuesday regular from the Province and Post Media, Patrick Johnston is here. Hello.
Hi. How are we doing? How's everybody?
Oh, so good and so much to unpack here because we haven't talked to you since all the fireworks of last week. So, you want to start with Miller or you want to start with Hronek?
Oh, let's go Miller. I mean, Miller's more.
Okay.
I mean,
all right.
More fun, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah,
what in the hell happened that all of a sudden they're shopping JT Miller at the death, as they say in soccer?
Well, I mean, I remember when he first signed and kind of going and talking to a couple of people, and I think I've said this before, like, you know, giving him the contract, if there is a logic you can claim where they said, well, at least now teams know the price, you know, that there was that aspect of what is the cost to this guy that had, I think, hovered over any conversations that the Canucks had with him going back to last season and, you know, going into the draft. And certainly that's, you know, one of the things I think we understand happened, for instance, with the Islanders. You know, Lou Lamoriello was interested. It was talked about. How far it actually got, I don't know. That's the thing I now wonder about. But, you know, there was some sort of conversation, and the regular thing was essentially that the Canucks weren't letting the agent talk to teams about what Miller was interested in terms of an extension. So, you know, I think that was always in the background. But like I said, there was this idea that, okay, well, maybe we set a price on him now, and maybe that'll push the conversation in a direction that is useful. You know, last week, I mean, I did talk to someone. I mean, clearly there were conversations. I mean, this stuff doesn't leak to everybody if it's not happening. Someone did ask me or pondered, how serious was Pittsburgh? You know, were they really interested? Obviously, you kind of parse stuff out, and you're like, obviously, third teams were getting talked to, given how stuff started flowing out. You know, so I wonder what was Pittsburgh really up to? I also think in the back of all this, there was, I mean, I still stand by what I said was that my understanding, there's a lot of conversation around Brock Boeser. And you know, why that didn't happen, I'm not exactly clear, and I don't quite know what the return would have been. But my assumption is that, you know, if you look at them trading for Granlund instead of Boeser, it had to do with cap hit. And, you know, essentially, as we know, the Canucks didn't want to retain. And I can understand why they wouldn't want to retain. They want to try to maintain a clean cap, as we've talked about. Yeah, you know, you're kind of stuck with this sort of notion, okay, to get Miller on someone else's team, you're going to have to take something back, but what do you want to take back? And if you're going to take something back, can you get a first-round pick, and can you flip that first-round pick to someone else for a young center? And, you know, it all sounded very elaborate and complicated, honestly very unhockey, but maybe we're entering into a world where things are going to be complicated. I mean, the cap has made this happen. That's part of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we're entering that world. And I don't think that, like, I wrote about this on Saturday. I don't think the trade chatter is going to go anywhere. You know,
That's it.
JT, you know, JT did joke. I mean, I appreciate it. He's like, it would help if you guys would stop talking about this. Yeah. But he that part of it, he gets it. You know, I mean, in the end, he knows he's a professional hockey player, and this is how it works.
Mm-hmm. No, and the funny part is, Patrick, you're absolutely right that we got so accustomed to seeing trade brokerage deals. And of course, you know, maybe there was a brokerage scenario with Boeser because of his. In this case, it just sounded like a three-way hockey conversation.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh's got $20 million in cap space for next year. Carolina has $30 million in cap space with tons of people coming off the books. Like, when you talk about the trade chatter isn't going to go away, I think depending, especially if they're short goals in the playoffs, Pittsburgh and Carolina might be right back there at the at the table in June.
Alvin said someone called. I think we're right to assume that it was Carolina. I don't have that 100%.
Yes,
so that was my assumption.
I think it was just predatory, Patrick. They were just like,
are you
Vancouver
stuck?
Vancouver wants off JT Miller. Let's break off the call, which, quite frankly, is the sort of smart way that Carolina has been managed here under the new owner.
Yeah, I mean, they're not fans of term. We know that much. But it was when we were in Carolina, and I was kind of working away on it, and then sadly, Gino passed away, and my attention had to shift, but rightly. But one of the things I was looking at was just trying to understand how Carolina works, because Tom Dundon has a reputation as a very involved owner. Obviously the Canucks have a very involved owner. And I was just trying to understand what's perhaps different. And it is pretty clear to me that here's a guy that lets his people work and sort of has an expectation. He sets a standard, which I think most owners do, but sets a standard and then kind of lets them do their job and says, here's what we're going for. Here's what I want. Here's the people I empower. You look at Eric Tulsky, a guy who could work in, like, he could do anything. The guy's, he's a brilliant man. He could go work, in academia. He could go work in research. Like, he's a guy that could do anything he wants, and he chooses to work for a hockey team. And I don't think it's a mistake that he's chose to stay with the Carolina Hurricanes.
And that hockey team as an AGM, too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so they built this powerful team. It was kind of wild. Like, I was asked on the weekend to sort of submit. Wyshynski was doing his roundup of awards at this point, and I was asked to sort of have my say. So you're looking around, make sure your instincts are right, and you're kind of okay. And you go and look at, like, the Corsi on defense, and you realize, like, 4 of the top 6 defensemen by Corsi for percentage are on the Hurricanes, including Jalen Chatfield. But you're also going, this team I saw them play. They play at the end of the ice they want to be, way more than almost any other team in the NHL. And JT Miller would look pretty good on that team. And so you can understand why, even with the term, they would be interested in perhaps in a player like him. But that said, they're not willing to pay any kind of price to get him. And predatory, exactly. This is the other thing, Carolina also recognizes the deadline is expensive, and they're not going to go shopping at the deadline because that's more expensive than they want. They set their team up beforehand. And so they're going to come into the playoffs, and the Eastern Conference is very deep. And we talk so much about, Tampa and Toronto and how wild that series is going to be. And a very good team is going to be eliminated. Part of the point of the playoffs is good teams get eliminated, right? Carolina may hit the wall at some point again, and they may have to say, this isn't working. We're going to try something different.
That's what I was going to ask you. If they have a second-round departure, do they come circling back? Because they'll be done on May 10th. Do they come circling back and consummate a trade between May 10th and July 1st?
Because they're ready to shuffle the deck.
Yeah.
They're saying, listen, the
mix
that we
is
had
right.
was awesome, but we need to move somebody out. They moved on from Nino Niederreiter. They have had a willingness to change things up and say, this isn't working. We're going to go in a different direction. So I think there's no reason to think it won't disappear. And same for Brock Boeser. Like, he doesn't score enough. I accept this, but he's on pace for 55 points this year. Like, that's a very solid number from the second line winger who supposedly can't skate.
Yeah.
He will help a team. So, is it this one or is it another one? And at what price point? That's the other question we're going to continue to have in our conversations.
What did you make of the Hronek deal?
Well, when I first saw it, I was sitting there with Kuz and with Woodley. We were working in the media workspace that we developed for ourselves between the elevator and the door that enters in the press box because it's not cold there. And we kind of went, what? They were going on and on and on about loving first and second overall, first round picks and second round picks, and now they moved them. And I couldn't help but think, there has been a narrative they've been sort of pushing forward here, which is, this reset, whatever you want to call it. And they clearly have been pushing in the direction of, let's accrue a bunch of picks while we can. Now, I was never I think I was convinced that they were going to sit on most of those picks and they go into this draft and have a really big draft. And for that standpoint, I found myself wondering, was there something missing? Did the Hronek deal, was it supposed to happen in tandem with something else? And I have a suspicion that, something like the Miller deal or the Boeser deal, was there another thing going to happen there? And he was going to go, okay, stuff comes back in. Is there a young player coming in? Something like that. And they would have been able, and that's why, I did try to press Alvin about it on Friday. And I said, listen, you talked a lot about how much you appreciate that first round pick you got for Horvat and how you clearly value second round picks, the ability to find possibly another first round pick. And here you are moving on from them. And he went, well, that's the price. And I said, but it's the deadline. Of course, that's the price. And he said, we didn't think we'd be able to get this player. So, the team's better. Like, that's the thing. Like, they are better. And I think as the big picture, I also think about sort of the challenge, like I've already mentioned, the reality of Toronto and Tampa. And you can do all this work and get knocked out in the first round.
Yeah.
Or you can just kind of be, well, let's be a playoff team. And, A certain part of me goes, I think Canucks, I think there's a large segment of fans that would just be happy with that. I mean, the idea I mean, I think everybody says, well, they should be contending for the cup, and they absolutely should be. But if you're looking for a brutal, realpolitik reality, just try to build a playoff team, which they are clearly trying to do. There is an argument, there is a case for that. I mean, it's not a Stanley Cup winning, it's not a championship contending. It's an underwhelming, but in many ways, that's what the point of the NHL is. It's to play some playoff, for owners anyway. It's to play some playoff games, get some extra revenue.
My goodness, though, this draft of all the times, this draft of what is likely to be a top 15 or top 20 pick, like of all the times.
I think I said this last week. I mean, you look at the top 20 in 2020. There's two guys that haven't played in the NHL, and they're both Russian. Like, a top 20 pick makes the NHL within 2 years. Like, he's 19 or 20, like top 10.
You're not waiting forever anymore.
It's not like you're getting guys that are not useful. You're getting guys that add value to your team right away. Yes, okay. That defenseman may not be Filip Hronek, but you know what? His cap hit's amazing. And, it was kind of funny to hear Patrick Belvin talking about sort of cost certainty and team control and all this stuff. And you're like, well, yeah, you have him for one more year, and then you can try to qualify him for another year, and then he's a free agent. Like, he can go anywhere he wants. Yeah. Why did you burn this draft?
Or you extend him for $7.5 million a year. So, you pay through the nose for this player. Great player, but you pay through the nose for him. And he's not going to win you a Norris.
Yeah. And then, you know what? Maybe, maybe you could sign him in 2 years, while you've got young defense. Anyway, in the short term, they're a better team. That's good. I will say that. That's good. I think for the purposes of fans, and it's a good thing. But the big picture remains, and the big picture, as we know, is underwhelming in terms of, what ownership wants to do, in terms of costs, in terms of things they're willing to pay for, the state of the arena, the lack of a practice rink, on and on and on and on. Those things are all still lingering there, and I think they're going to continue to be a problem.
Before we leave the blue line here, just away from the trade, do we see Rathbone, and do they consider Christian Wolanin going forward? He's not a prospect; he's a journeyman, but has he shown enough? Because he's a plus player at the NHL level. He's got a couple of points. They're playing him in overtime. It's an awful lot of trust for a guy that they got off the scrap heap.
I'm in a chat that involves people arguing over Christian Wolanin's merit. One of them was like, I want to see new guys. I like this guy. And the other one is, I like to see new guys, but not this guy, Yeah. There was that 2-0. Was it against the Leafs? Or was it against Minnesota? When he and Granlund came in, and all he had to do was get the puck in the air. And he didn't. Yeah. He was a very this is why Christian Wolanin is sort of a tweener. He's a quad A player. He's been fine. Like, he does smart. You can see why he's played, of all the guys they have and they've had in Abbotsford, why he's played the most in the NHL. There have been good things he does. So could he be, is there really much difference between him and Riley Stillman, or him and Kyle Burrows, or any of the kind of guys in that sort of 6, 7, 8 range? I don't think so. I was surprised he didn't come up earlier in the year when they had a need. Yeah, I mean, a certain level, if we're talking about that, we should talk about Guillaume Brisebois. Guillaume Brisebois has been basically fine. He's not a guy that, he's going to move the meter, but he's been basically fine. At the end of the day, the statement is this: the fact that OEL is hurt, they've traded Stillman, and
no worse defensively.
They're no worse. In fact, they might be better, and they're playing 3 AHL call-ups, and they're number 7 defenseman. Yeah. So, what does that tell us? Again, I mean, that's nothing new in Vancouver. The idea that the assembly of the blue line has not been well thought out. That is an old story here, not a new one. But it does make you pause when that's the reality, and that's how things have played out.
Is Silov's forcing his way into the backup crease next year?
I'm starting to wonder that. I certainly thought when he, obviously his first game against New York, you could see why, he still had work to do. Let's remember Spencer Martin had a great 6 games last year or wherever it was. And,
you gotta be careful.
And then, he essentially the clock hit midnight, and Good dude, and he's worked very hard. But at the end of the day, he is one of many, many goalies who are almost there, but not quite there. And so the challenge for Silovs now is to push himself past that. And so from that standpoint, I think we are going to see him again and again here. I mean, obviously Colin Delia being sick helped. I have no reason to think he wasn't. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more of those. In terms of the challenge, of course, now is that they have to be under emergency conditions because the Canucks made all 4 of their regular recalls on Friday. I could see it. I mean, I think, obviously Delia has the experience and a bit of a track record as a sort of capable NHL backup, and he's been fine. It comes down to what you're looking for. Do you need a guy that can kind of tread water, maybe steal a game or two for you? I think they were certainly hoping that's what Spencer Martin would be. I don't know if we'll see that again. Obviously, Delia is a free agent this summer, so they have to make a decision on him as well. I think the odds are good at this point that we kind of see Silovs as the backup, and Spencer Martin is essentially the sort of Richard Bachman type that the Canucks ran with for several seasons. Essentially he's the number 3. He's going to basically be the number 1 guy in Abbotsford. And he'll be if they need a goalie who can come up and they know that, at least he's a good dude and he's not going to sort of cause a ruckus, he can be the guy. And then, obviously they have Aku Koskadua. He's at Harvard, and as far as I understand, is going to go there the whole time. So, they're going to need to find some other young goalie to probably play in Abbotsford, just because you got to keep that turning over. You got to keep finding the next guy. I think there's a good chance. Just sort of the progress we've seen in the 5 starts, and the improvements he's had, and obviously played very well on Monday night. I think there's every reason to think that he could be the backup.
Got to get you on the Bulldog Poll question for today. Who gets to 40 goals? Pettersson, Kuzmenko? Neither? Both?
I'm going to say both. I think Pettersson gets there for sure. Gets there for sure.
Yep.
And Kuzmenko, I noted this on the weekend. He's got the most tip goals in the NHL. That's the skill he has.
Mm-hmm.
The Canucks have worked very hard on this. I feel like there is a bit of luck involved in tips, but there's enough consistency in it this year in the way they're doing it that I do feel a little bit like, in soccer there was a run for a while where teams got all in on set pieces because nobody was practicing set pieces. Happened here with Carl Robinson, right? There was a run sort of 5-6 years ago of teams doing this because nobody was practicing. Now people practice set pieces again and they become less of a weapon. But I find myself in that term, like point shots for tips. Definitely, that's why teams talk about layering and all these kinds of things, and they try to get in the way of every shot and just make it difficult. But the Canucks,
it's the new point shot, right? Because the point shot's disappeared.
Yeah.
So
So you find, the redirect and all that, and Luke Ken was pretty good at it. And, there was a reason why he was trying to do his career high in points because he was very good at it. When he was very good at it. It's something the Canucks have worked on, I think, and it's enough. I've seen enough now to say that this is something they're trying to do. And I have no doubt that defenses will adapt and will disappear, but just the success Kuzmenko's had at it, and I talked to Put Colson about it on Saturday, and he said, no, it's real skill. He's got high IQ. He's an old guy, It was good fun. But I think it'll be tough for him to get 40 points. I think Pettersson will get there. He's just on sort of a bit of a tear right now, and he just seems to want to sort of show what's there and push through and and he is the guy. He needs to be the guy, and he's been the guy. So there you go. I'll say both.
Since you made the clunky soccer analogy, I will ask you straight up: inward swinging or outward swinging corner?
Well, they used to say only inward swinging, but outward swinging, you get more power. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, Blake?
I like inward swinging.
No,
it's more graceful. I get it.
Well, also you just went in a little redirect and it's skipping towards the goal anyway, right?
No. It's outward. The Athletic did a story on this a couple of years ago. You're both wrong. It's
did they outward. Really? Huh?
Yeah, outward
I said upward.
Yeah, no, exactly. Outward leads to more chances because the keeper and defenders have to go and reach the ball. They have to displace from where they would prefer to be in defensive
Can't
posture.
just be stout defensively.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not kicking it into the goalkeeper's path. You're kicking it away from the keeper and the defenders, so they have to put them on the spot. They feel the pressure. Thank you, Patrick.
Exactly.
You're marvelous.
Well,
Until
most
next season.
coaches would disagree.
I'm going Ted Lasso here to tell you, the outward swinger.
All right, fellas.
Bye now.
Bye.